Good morning, everybody. I am here today with Debby Marcy, who I have used myself as a virtual assistant, and she is awesome. And I also rely on her a lot for feedback and guidance and input for general virtual assistant questions and managing people. And even if you are not a virtual assistant, but you're a freelancer, I think she has a lot of really interesting guidance for us as to how to run our own businesses. And what prompted this conversation this morning is somebody I know asked me how, they were expressing to me sort of their shock. They had brought in a virtual assistant to do a project, and it wasn't quite done to the level that they had been hoping for, which is sort of a separate issue, but they were shocked at the amount of time the person said it took them to complete it. So that led to me reaching out to Debby to ask her about some time tracker tools and how to, keep track. Like, is there a system? What's a standard? I really didn't know. So thank you for being here.
Hi, Eileen. Thanks very much for inviting me to talk about this. And hi, everybody.
Yeah. So let's sort of just jump right in with, like, at the beginning, say maybe before you're at a point of tracking time. Like, give us some expectations both sides need to have when entering into an agreement of, virtual assistant or freelance client, sort of what your experience leans towards a good practice or what will lead up to a good relationship.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, it's like all jobs where you freelance with somebody and what have you. I think the best thing to do is if you're going to want to employ a VA, you need to do some pretty good research, but you also, most good VAs will offer you a complimentary 30 minutes Skype or Zoom or whatever, and have a talk with them about what they can do, you can expect from them. They won't mind. If they're a good one, they will do that with you, and they'll have a chat and what have you. The expectations are for creative work, that is a bit nebulous, is that? And for me, for creative work, a proofreading and a rejig of documents for a one-off project, I would probably just quote a figure for that, because I would probably know that my own standards would probably mean that it would take a bit longer, but that's not the client's fault. That's just me being a bit of a perfectionist on these things. So say, I would say that they are the more nebulous ones. If it's creative work, ask for a one-off project price, probably. If it's PA work, well, everybody knows. Say, like, if I was managing somebody's business for them for a week's holiday, just keeping things going, as it were, I would probably and looking after their mobile and things like that, checking emails and things. I would probably say only half an hour a day to do something like that, as long as you weren't supposed to be doing a huge amount. However, if I was doing, say, actually answering all the correspondence and everything like that, I would say that you would need to be allowing, you're there on basically working for them all day. So you would expect to be saying, dependent on how busy they were, an hour or 2 hours even a day if you were managing their emails and appointment making and things like that. If it's transcription, the normal, shall we say the accepted wisdom with transcription is 1 minute of audio equals 4 minutes of my time doing transcription. And that increases dependent on the quality of the audio and what have you. But I usually charge my clients, say if they send me 15 minutes of transcription, I would say that will be an hour of my work too. 15 minutes of audio times 4 an hour. Yeah. So basically, that's what you can expect. research and things like that, well, basically, that's just timed work. I would ask for that to be timed myself, because there's a product that should come out of it. You know, I mean, you should know that once you started working on, say if a client gave me, Deb, find out 20 companies that do a certain thing, so I can contact them. I want the telephone number, the website. If you can get somebody, don't bother ringing up, but just check out, say, an HR director or something like that. If you can find that out, I mean, I would say that'd be about an hour's work, that, you know, to do a decent sweep, you know. It's basic, but that's how I work. The other thing is, of course, that you have to make sure that you do your research about the VA in the first place. It's no good asking a VA who's a PA type person.
So what's the difference between a VA and a PA?
Well, a virtual assistant is a sort of person who has a very broad overview of certain things. I mean, you can be a techie VA like me, or you can be a traditional VA, PA like me. I'm a virtual personal assistant. I do both sides of things.
Okay.
PA would be somebody who works for somebody. A personal assistant would be what I used to do, which was like work for a CEO or somebody like that.
Okay.
But because a lot of PAs like myself, traditional PAs, have gone into virtual assistant work because the role of the PA is actually dying out. People have their own laptops, they make their own appointments, they've got their own apps, this, that, and the other. So they don't actually need somebody like me to look after them. So, I mean, that's why I went to virtual assistant work. But I would consider myself to be a traditional PA, a virtual assistant with techie skills.
Right.
Going back to checking out which one you wanted, it would be no good saying to a virtual assistant who's come from PA work and has no background in technical work or WordPress or something like that to do blogging. I mean, for me, I would say to do a blog, to format and set it up properly, I would say an hour. You know, to be honest.
I think an hour is that would mean knows what they're doing. I mean, I have I'm like probably getting close to 500 blog posts, and I would say, you know, all in, it's 3 hours by the time you write it, research it.
Yeah, exactly.
So an hour, I think, is a fair amount of time for somebody to, format it, or, you know, once the post is written.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, find a suitable photograph. You know, so like if one of my clients, I tend to work with coaches quite a lot, so I know what they're talking about. I know the technical terms in coaching, so it's quite easy for me to find an appropriate a graphic that's appropriate.
Yeah,
the SEO's easy for me. I use Yoast, I must admit, because I like to see the green lights, and when I see the green lights, I'm fine with that. But there are other products available, as they say, but I use Yoast. It's quick.
Yeah,
I'd say an hour for a blog, and also say like a MailChimp newsletter.
Right.
An hour to 2 hours. It just depends.
So let's just for a moment, are there maybe sort of 3 generic questions, or 2 or 5 or 1, that maybe the virtual assistant or the person hiring could ask to set up the expectations of one another? Like if it's a blog post and you're doing the research, you know, how many words is that going to be? Or if it's a MailChimp, you know, do you want images, or maybe for everything, like, are you going to need images? How many outbound links do you want? Or are there, or, you know, any sort of guidelines towards?
Well, it's really, I think the basic thing is, first of all, it's quite difficult for me to explain it, really. I don't know how I do it. I mean, it's different from how other people do it. I mean, if I was looking at a blog post, I would say, right, I know that it's going to take me an hour to translate it into proper English, because I do a little bit of drafting on it and what have you, plus get research at least one outbound link, do a couple of inbounds and decide on a suitable graphic. That would take me an hour for my client, and I know what she would expect me to put in there.
Right.
When it comes to mail, I mean, generally, my clients like me to advise them. I'll be perfectly honest and say you've got to be fairly proactive if you're a virtual assistant, because quite often you'll find that your clients aren't that technical, probably like web design and stuff like that. It's difficult to find that they're technical, so therefore what would have worked in MailChimp, say, 3 years ago, which was a fabulous graphic with lots of little boxes with pictures and all the rest of it, just in there, that doesn't work anymore. And I actually say to my clients now, there's no point in me putting pictures in. People are looking at them on mobiles. I mean, if they're anything like me, I don't have anything set to download unless I want to have it. So therefore, I just put... now I don't go doing all the graphic work. I put more into the content and the back, the alt text and things like that, because I know that people will just see client name and logo or something like that, or a picture of this, you know, which represents this, you know. So I'll put more work into that.
I think, though, let me just jump in. You advised me on that, and you know, when you have the benefit of working with lots of clients across different sectors, and even though you do lots of work for coaches, you know, you have lots of category experience. So, you know, that's why I felt like reaching out to you was just more than like you sort of getting it done for me. You were a bigger picture advisor. And like you say, you were proactive. You didn't hesitate to say, you know what, Eileen, you need to circle back on this because you missed a point. So, you know, I think that people sometimes maybe in the short end or before you get started, miss that bigger picture connection.
It means that basically that you need to make sure that you've had a really good session of, you know, the questions you need to ask a client before you set off. You need to know, you know, what are their keywords, what are their important pain points, what they need, all those sorts of things. And some clients don't like you to do too much fiddling with their things. You need to get that established as well. You need to ask the client, basically, how much can I do towards this piece of work? Do you want to see it exactly like it is? You know, and that sort of thing. So it's really important. And on the other side of it, the client must say to the VA, it's really important that you don't change this. I don't want you to. Right. And I can say, I don't think this is right, but then they'll say, no, this is the way I prefer it. Right. And that's really important, because when you're working virtually with somebody, you can't keep going and saying to them, sorry, Eileen, how does this, you know, do you want it like this? I mean, I have one client who works in America quite a lot and who works in the UK quite a lot, and she does a lot of articles and things. So I have to know, is this for her American audience, or is it for her UK audience and Europe audience? You know, because depending on which it is, the spelling and the formatting of dates and things like that is different. You know, so basically, you have to establish boundaries right at the beginning of the work, even if it's only a one-off piece of work. And if you've got a good VA, they will ask you the right questions. Longer term, they'll be asking you, what's your keywords? Where do you see yourself in 3 months' time? Are you going to be doing social media? Who do you want to follow? That sort of thing. But it's always, how much input do you want into this, into this piece of work, into all your projects. And that's the important thing.
Right. So let's jump over to time for a minute, because time is, I think it's really, really tricky, because
yeah,
what takes me, 10 minutes, and this is in all aspects of life. Like, sometimes I'll say to my children, could you like tidy up your room, and 2 minutes later they're done because, their socks are stuffed under the bed or something. You know what I mean? Like, time is just one of those things, and people sometimes feel that they could do it faster, or what took so long, or really it only took you that amount of time. So like I think that time tracking devices are helpful for, so let's pretend I'm the client.
Yeah.
Then I would know, wow, that took 20 hours, and I probably could have done it in 10. Was I not clear with my directions? Is she not the right one to work on WordPress or blogging? Or, is she just in learning mode, and next time it'll take her 18 and then 15? And, so I guess I'd like to know sort of your opinion on time tracking, and maybe is it a good thing, a bad thing, and we have a couple tools, like how to approach that part of project work.
Right. Okay. Well, I would say from the first thing that any project, if it's a one-off like transcription, that's easy. You can say, right, I'll tell you how long this is going to take. This is going to take 1 times 4. That's,
Right.
client knows. That's fine.
Yeah.
If you're going to be working longer term together, you would then need to say to them, look, there's a set number of jobs that you want me to do. Realistically, I can't tell you how long it's going to take until I've seen the work and actually started to do it. It might be that I need to learn a new piece of software. So therefore, and to get to know each other, how you work together. So I think in the first month or 2, it's not realistic to expect a set time to be done and quoted, shall we say. However, I would suggest that possibly you would be able to get a round guesstimate from the VA. If you wanted to actually track time, there are a couple of time trackers which I use for a couple of clients who do like to see how much time there is, because they give me a huge chunk of time to work with, and they like to know where they are up to sometimes.
Yeah.
If they've got a big project coming up or something like that, or if they're going off on holiday, have I got enough time in the bag if something comes up that's an emergency and I have to ask Deb to deal with. For my time tracking, I use Toggle, which is one that most clients...
I'm going to share my screen and pull it up for a second.
Yeah, Toggle. It's very good. It's very simple. And it's incredibly good from the point of view of basically you put it on and it times. And what you can use it for is you can either do, as I often do with it, just put in an amount of time in there, and so that the client sees, what time I spent, or I can actually time with it, literally to the, it will come up with seconds, as it were. The reporting on Toggle is excellent, even for the paid version. You can see now that you get some absolutely outstanding reporting, and it's very visual. The client can see how much time has been spent on their projects, and perhaps balance out whether the VA is spending too much time on one project when they'd like to spend them on another, because it's really easy to see on a pie chart.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have either a pie chart, or you can have a detail, just a list of what you've done, basically.
Yeah.
And this is the one I would recommend.
also really good for web designers. I think if you're, building sites, like track how long does it actually take to do the SEO for a 10-page website, or how long does it take to do the setup or the launch, or I think that this is great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that actually with Toggle, there's one thing, you can actually time yourself doing things. And I think most people should get into the habit of doing that.
Right.
Because you can be under reporting time.
Definitely.
And, you have to put your brave pants on sometimes and tell the client exactly how much time you did actually spend on it.
Right. Right.
Because you've got to, it is, you almost feel, unless you're supremely confident about things, and I know lots of VAs, myself included, and I'll think, crumbs, did it take that long to do that? And then I'll think, well, I'm good at what I do. I know I am, and therefore that's how long it took. But you have to have the time in there and the justification to say to the client, look, this is what it took. I know it looks a lot of time, but unfortunately, that was it.
Right. Right. But I think if you keep track and you say, I had to change the links, I had to add in social media icons that didn't exist in the theme, I had to do this, I had to find a plugin, blah, 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 and you just itemize it out.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you kind of work in tandem, I think then, it's good for both of you.
The thing is, well, that you can actually invite people to be in the team so that they can actually see the dashboard if you want them to do so.
Yeah.
There is a stop-start function in it as well, which is really important because of the fact that quite often somebody will come and interrupt you. If you're working, particularly in your own office at home, obviously, people will come and interrupt you and say, do you want a cup of tea, do you want a sandwich? And telephone will come on. You might get one of your best friends like mine who has the habit of ringing up and saying, well, it's a lovely day, I'm going out for a walk today, do you want to come for a walk? I'll say, sorry. I won't say who it is because you might hear me. I can't talk now because I'm actually working at the moment. People tend to forget that if you're at home in the office, you are working.
Right.
So the stop-start function is very important. The other thing is as well that you must remember that you have to switch it on and off. It's not fair to the client if you don't do that. So you really do need to get quite keen with yourself to do that. Right. Because if you're not being honest with the client and they come back at you, well then that's not good. It's not a good look. And one little discrepancy you might get away with, but two, the client isn't silly, they know how you work, and really you've got to be honest about it.
Right.
I'm not saying that there are any VAs who wouldn't do that, but it can happen accidentally, so you must be quite firm with yourself.
Right.
Another one that I would suggest is Time Doctor. That one is actually one that I don't use, but I was doing some research on this one. And as you can see, this one is a lot more hands-on, is Time Doctor. And if you were going to be using this one, I would say that it's one that you would say to the client, if you want to be able to jump in and out and have a look at what's going on with me, what I'm doing, you'll have to pay for this one because it's not one that VAs would necessarily pay for. It would be if you were keen to see what VA was doing, because you can actually go in and out and take snapshots of the screen and monitor time more hands-on, if you will.
Right.
I would say to a caveat with that having done the research on this, quite a few VAs who I put this question to when you asked me about it, about time management and what have you, because I needed to ask about other ones that we use because I use Toggle. They were quite almost, the word is not offended, but quite surprised about the fact that a client would be questioning the honesty of what they were doing. I don't think it even enters their head about that sort of thing, but some clients, possibly who've never used a VA before, might want to see, what was happening, because we're not in the office, they can't come and stand behind you. And if you have a client who feels like that, I would suggest that Time Doctor would be quite a good one for them. If it's their first time using a VA and they haven't done their research, if you haven't checked out the VA on LinkedIn and seen a few references or, that sort of thing, or if it's a new task that you're setting this VA and you're not sure, neither of you sure how long it's going to take.
Right.
Well, at that point, I would say that Time Doctor might be one that you might want to use. Otherwise, if you're using Toggle, then that's one for you to just have a sort of overview of what the VA is doing for you, so that you can say, this is the right balance in my project. If you've got a client who wants social media and WordPress work or website work and some VA PA work, appointment making and what have you, if the VA happens to like doing one thing and you want to and spends more time on that, it will become apparent over a month or 2 months that you can see the breakdown of the time. Right. And therefore say, right, okay, might be that we will need to review this when we have our 3 monthly review, to say, look, Deb, you really like doing WordPress and things, or whichever VA it is. I can tell that because you're not spending much time on my cold calling, which I absolutely hate, and I'll do anything to avoid it. But if the client wants it, obviously, as part of the package, you have to say, yeah, okay. And I know that if I had the time, if the truth was told on timing, you will clearly see that I would spend more time on the blogging, the this and that, until they related to website work rather than the cold calling. And also I'd spend more time on the correspondence side of things, and that. So you can see it's really good for that, because you have this pie chart that clearly you can really see very clearly what it is.
Right. Well, and I also think, some from the perspective of like your client, I would say, like, looking in at the time doesn't mean that I'm thinking you're not efficient or worth it or helpful or you're dragging your feet or something like that. It would be more of, I have a finite budget for my projects, and if I have, like, this is a perfect example. I hired a VA to do this other, like, kind of work that kind of felt like just kind of copying and pasting and this and that and whatever. And I totally underestimated the time it would take her. And out of fairness to her, I think she was sick of it because it took so long. And I, at the end of the day, said, wow, like, did I really, was that the best use of my money and my time with her? And it had nothing to do with her. I'm the one who created the project and asked for it and wanted it. So it was more like for me to say, and we didn't track the time until the end. I got a bill from her because that's the way we work, and she's great, and I totally trust her. But it was like, would my money have been better spent towards something else? And that's, so it's for me to gauge my own sort of like system. So I don't think it's the time. Like, I don't think anybody should feel like, somebody's looking over my shoulder.
No, I don't think that they should, but some VAs do take that view.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there are some people out there that are, like, sort of annoying about, like, how long does it take?
Yeah, there's a difference between wanting to keep an eye on your budget, but also micromanaging, and that's
right. So what's the point of having somebody if you're going to watch every 10 minutes?
I mean, that is just absolutely, know. I think the thing is with this, Eileen, is that perhaps there's two things here that is an issue relating to what you're talking right there. First of all, did the VA know exactly what was required? Is that the problem is that she didn't know what was required, or was it more than you thought was required? So basically, I think it's at the start of the project, you really need to know what's going to be required. It could be that it is literally a cut and shut job from one place to another and what have you. Then suddenly when you realise that it's more than that, if you've got a professional VA, she'll probably be honest with you and tell you straight away, sorry, we've made a mistake here.
Right.
This is a lot more than we discussed.
Right.
Let's reevaluate. Yeah. Are you going to get the ROI on the investment, on your money into the time that I've given you or not? And generally, if I'm working with a client, what I will say to them is, if they've paid me a retainer, I will track time for them, as I was saying before, and I will give them a heads up within an agreed space of time. Say if it was, this client who I'm just working with, that I've just done the report for, funnily enough, in Toggle today, he takes 60 hours of my time in a chunk and pays me for that.
Yep.
And I'm self-propelled. I just go away and do what Debbie's do.
Right.
And then I've just sent him this report. He's about 55 hours. So that means that I'm just saying to him, hi, just to let you know that you're at 55 hours. This is how I've spent it over the last 6 months. Are we getting it right? I have actually asked him these questions, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Am I getting the balance right? Do you want to spend more time on this, or do you want to spend more time on that? So basically that's how it works with how I do it. He knows that I know what to do. It's just whether I'm doing it in the I know all the words, am I putting them together in the right order, basically. But if you're doing a one-off project with somebody, you haven't worked with them before and what have you, it's really important that you ask the right questions from the VA's point of view, and that you tell them exactly what you think you're going to be doing. And then you should have an agreement between the two of you to say, if I've got a question, if either of us is feeling that this isn't going right, let's flag up and say, hey, I'm sorry, but this isn't what you said you wanted me to do. Or on your side, hello, VA, actually, I was expecting a bit more than this. Or alternatively, you're overthinking this for me. I didn't expect quite so much from you. Step back a bit, or oh, that's really great. Actually, I didn't think you could do that much with this. Let's rethink it and let's move on to the next stage. I'll give you a bit more of my budget because I quite like what you're doing. So it's important to get the understanding of what's required out in the open. You can say to me, here's a piece of work, Deb, and I can say, thank you, I'll give you this back if you give me the money for it. But if I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, whoa, this isn't what we were talking about at all, and you're thinking, whoa, this isn't what I expected to come back in the,
right.
Then something's wrong somewhere.
So let me ask you, I'm going to give you a real case scenario from a woman that I'm friendly with who hired a VA, and the one who we started off with, where she thought that the time spent, now she had given a flat fee for the project. And
yeah.
The woman at the end said, this took me X amount of hours, which was a lot. And so I suggested to her, in my inexperience, I think you should have had some benchmarks where you met after 3 hours, you met after 10 hours,
yeah,
then, maybe 15 hours, and then you said, okay, finish it up or round it out. And then, is that fair?
yeah.
Okay. And is that typical? Is that a best practice? Because the person didn't really seem keen for that.
No, well, I mean,
I meant her person that she hired didn't really.
Well, I'm sorry, but no. We discussed this before. Let's be honest about contract, and it's one of the things I bang on about all the time. It's all there in the contract, and you must get that right. Now, with even with a one-off project, generally, I would say that you need to have boundaries in place. I would say that if I'm doing a one-off project, I'll say this is going to take me 2 hours, right? Okay, and I will generally put that in an email or something like that. If it's just a piece of non-confidential, cut and paste, copying, and all the rest of it, that's fine. But anything, and also if I know the person, and I'm doing it as a one-off job, and that's it, I'll do it. Yeah, I don't mind. But generally what I would do is I'd have a client agreement, a confidentiality agreement, where we'd set out, I will work for you for so many hours. This is what you can expect from me. That's what you can and I will expect this from you. I always send a report to clients every month with a timesheet, if it's appropriate, or an update saying what I've done. I mean, I used to do it on a weekly basis, to be perfectly honest, but I found that it was taking me so much time to do the admin that probably that wasn't a good use of my time. So what I usually do is say once every month, unless you've got a query. I also do a catch-up every 3 months, and if necessary, I will do a sort of catch-up. I'm talking like an hour on Skype I will do, or Zoom, which I will probably record.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But I also say as well feedback, but definitely, you should be catching up every month, at least with an information about what's being times being used and things like that. And if you're doing a one-off project, you should say at a trigger point, say if the VA is quoted, you say 10 hours, what should happen is that the VA should, at about 8 hours, say, this is the point at which I am at with this work.
Right.
It is under budget, so I'm really pleased to tell you that I'm only going to be charging you for 8 hours. Or she's going to say to you, I'm really sorry, I underestimated this, or the work was more than I anticipated, and in actual fact it's going to take me 12 hours. Now what would you like me to do? Would you like me to just go to 10 hours and give you back the work at the point at which I am, because the majority of it will have been done and the spade work's all been done and you can continue with it? Or would you like me to continue to carry on to do the work and have you got the budget for it? Do you want me to do that? If not, that's fine. We agreed 10 hours and, we'll just call it fine.
Right.
Without ill feeling. But what you must do is set a time boundary with the VA that you don't suddenly get at the end of the piece, you get this huge bill, which you weren't expecting. But that's also the client's fault as well, to be honest, because she let somebody run with something without keeping an eye on it. I mean, it's like, it's like any work person, you don't just say to them, right, here's a carte blanche. You just go off and do what you do and just check in with me when you're finished at the end of it, and I'll just pay you. Right. You don't do that. You know, you have to have some boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, you know.
Right. Well, I think, you know, like you say, in your contract, set up deliverables and check in, and you know, the communication is key. If you have a nice you know, if it, you know, like you and I were checking in a lot, you were probably sick of me, but
no, not at all. I mean, you can't take the PA out of the VA. I like contact with that client. You know, I do. I like to check in with them. I like that. In fact, I have one client who I meet for lunch, and we were supposed to have a working lunch. We usually ended up staying 4 hours and talking about families or this and that until and then right at the piece I'll say, right, this is what we've got to do. There's this and this, and she'll say, yeah, I'm going to do 4 blogs and I'll drop some off for you. I'm interested in audio books. Yeah, okay, do some research on that. Yeah, fine. Kiss and goodbye. So we do sort of our work in sort of like 15 minutes. Right. But that's the relationship I like with my clients, because I can then get in contact and say, look, I don't get this. I'm not getting anywhere with it. I don't understand it. And that is the big thing, I think. You've got to have some sort of relationship where you can say, I don't understand. It's very difficult asking a question when you feel that you should be able to do the job. But that's a part of confidence on the part of the VA. So, yeah. You should be able to say, look, I don't understand this. I'm really sorry. Did I not ask the right questions? But also the client should also be thinking, right, am I telling her the right information? You know, and that's the thing, basically.
Yeah, spot on. All right, I don't want to take any more of your day. I really thank you very much for being such a resource, and you know, I think that your work is great, and I use other people for other projects, and it's really a game changer in the day. So I highly recommend it. And like you say, you know, just any relationship that you have, communication is key, and confidence. Everybody, confidence in your skills. Like you say, you know that you're good at what you do, the value that you bring. And when you come to the table, you know, you're dealing with business people. They respect that you're a business person, and, you know, act accordingly. And don't be afraid of a contract.
It's really important to do the contracting. The other thing is as well that if you're working with a client and it's not a good fit, it's usually there in the first 5 minutes. You can always feel it. You know, you should go with your gut instincts on these things.
Right.
If you know you're not going to be able to work with a client, you have to say, this isn't working for me. Right. I'll find you another VA. Yeah. How do you feel about it? There's no point in persevering. And particularly if you start to get a client who's starting to say, right, well, I want to see timesheets because I'm not sure about it. If the client's feeling like that, there's some reason for that. And you have to say to them, it's not a good fit, or what shall we do about this? And sometimes it's, for both of you, it's better to sort of say, yeah, that's fine. Let's part as friends, you know, and what have you. Because people do work in different ways, you know.
They absolutely work in different ways. And we had this conversation, Andrew and I, and some other people a couple weeks ago on a Zoom call, where when you take on a client, you are bringing them into your life. And not only does it affect sort of how you work, it for me, you know, I try to leave it like at my office threshold, but it can creep into the mood of the rest of the day, and we're all tied into our devices. And if you get that phone call at a weird time, or, you know, somebody's, you know, I had a client once who I was like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning calling me, like, you know what? I don't want this in my life. My family doesn't want it in their life. And like you say, you have to just say, I think that we're not on the same wavelength. Whereas I have other clients that I'm like crazy about, I adore, and I know other people wouldn't work well with them. It's just like what works for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine. You're not married to everybody,
Absolutely. And that is why time tracking done properly is a really good thing. From the point of view, if you're starting to feel uncomfortable with a client, you need to be time tracking, even if they don't know that you're time tracking, because you need to be able to present
right.
evidence. And if on balance, if I was contracting with a VA in the first place, I probably would ask for time tracking. I mean, if I have an associate do some work for me, I usually ask them I will ask them for a statement of the time, just so that I can say to my client, this has taken so much time to do this, because they may ask me, well, how long did it take? And I don't know, because I only know what my associates told me, that it's, I need to have the proof so I can say that it's been done that way. Right. And I said, if you are outsourcing in any respect whatsoever, say if you've got to take on an associate and you're outsourcing, you need to be asking them for a statement of time from them as well, because at the bottom line is the client may well want to know how long did it take to get a logo made, or things like that. Right. Those sorts of things. Yeah. So I don't know if it's been very helpful or not, to be perfectly honest, Sally.
I think it's an interesting conversation. It can go a lot of different ways, and I think if you are considering hiring somebody, or if you're working as a VA, I think it's really interesting to hear what other people sort of take away. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Well, I hope it was helpful. But you must remember also that every VA is different. Some are very 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Some won't give away time, and some will be bend over backwards and not charge you enough, probably. Right. So you've just got to, you've got to pick your VA very carefully, somebody who's a good fit for you. Right. And it's always there in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Deb.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Super.